freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your fantasy preview for this week's Bermuda Championship. Joining me to break it all down, Greg DuCharme is here. Hello, Greg.
Rick, good evening. Excited to be here. 2 events left in the FedEx Cup Fall. It's really coming down to the wire, and we got 2 cool golf courses. I guess technically 3 cool golf courses in 2 events. But this week, just 1, Port Royal.
That's right. There are pros and cons of the FedEx Cup Fall. One of the things that I like for our purposes is that for the most part, the same group of golfers have played every single event, which means we've got guys that have played 4, 5, 6 times in the fall. There is not a question about their form. You could argue the quality of the field. You could argue a lot of different things, but I do think that has been one of the more interesting benefits of this.
Well, look, the fall time for the PGA Tour is a really challenging area of the schedule for so many reasons. You got your stars who you want to be able to give them some off time. There have been calls for an off season on the PGA Tour for a long time. You have football that you're competing against. There are a lot of things that go against the PGA Tour when it comes to the fall. But one thing I've always been a fan of is, hey, the job of the tour is to give guys opportunities to play. And they utilize the fall really nicely to do that. And so that's why you get these same guys who are competing for next year's status this fall. And it's highly competitive, and it's great for, it's not necessarily going to compete against football. It's not a mainstream element right now. That's understood. But when you start to break down these fields and look at players, if you're into the golf DFS, it's still fascinating. And there's a lot of opportunity for our purposes. So, Rick, I think that was well said.
Well,
by you, not me.
I thank you. Well, yours was well said too. Let's just pat each other on the back. All right. Well done. We are headed to Bermuda, and we're going to Port Royal Golf Course, as Greg mentioned. Josh, if you want to share my screen, I've got the scorecard up here, and we can start diving into this. And what you're seeing is a par 71, 6,800 yards, and you're probably thinking, oh, Rick, that's got to be one of the shortest courses on the PGA Tour schedule. And you would be correct, Greg. This is a golf course that actually had to be lengthened a few years back to even get it to this point where the professionals could play on it. It's one of the handful of golf courses on the island, and it's what the boys are going to be tackling this week.
Yes, and it's a really cool golf course. It is very weather dependent. Being a coastal golf course, an island golf course, there is a lot of elevation change throughout the property. You're dealing with some small greens and some narrow landing areas in windy conditions. So it really can be rather challenging. It has gotten to 24 under par for the winning score twice in the 5 times that we've been here. We've had a couple winners at 15 under par. Seamus Power 2 years ago was 19 under par in 2022. So even though it is short, it really does, weather dependent, it holds up to the best players in the world. And I think it does create a really interesting challenge for different reasons than we normally see on tour.
Yeah, and if you start looking through, for whatever reason, this event, it feels like it's been around a lot longer than it actually has. But we've got a decent bit of data, and the way that I run these models every week, Greg, it's quite simple in nature. It just says, what type of golfer has had the most success at each one of these golf courses, and you'll see the 2 things that generally stand out: driving accuracy and strokes gained putting. You do not need to be long. You kind of listed off some of the winners around here. You're talking about Brendan Todd, Camilo Villegas, Lucas Herbert, Brian Gay, and one more that I'm missing that I cannot remember. And then, just the ability to take advantage of as many opportunities as you can. And if the weather starts to howl, it offers a different test. But a lot of guys are live here this week.
Yes. And it's always, when you get driving accuracy and putting as your 2 strongest correlated statistics, it leaves you in kind of uncomfortable water. The guys that are accurate and putt well aren't necessarily always the best players. And so you really got to take a deep look at why do they putt well. Are they putting well because they're scrambling for par a lot and they're not hitting a lot of greens in regulation? Are they just lacking distance? And this is a golf course that allows them to hit some shorter clubs into the greens. I also find it interesting if you're watching on YouTube, you go over on the left-hand side, and a lot of these correlations in here are wedge shots, 125, 125 to 150, 50 to 125, another really important one. And I think that's going to be something we can mine into when we get into some of these lower ranges, the 7K range, the 6K range, where guys don't seem to be in great form. There may be an avenue for them to play really well this week because of their performance with wedges. And when on most courses on the PGA Tour, they don't have the length to get to these wedge numbers. On this golf course, they do, and it makes them very live this week.
Yeah, and as I go back to the scorecard here, just pointing out, I mean, the way that they added some distance to this golf course was the par threes, mostly. 3 out of the 4 of them play over 200 yards, 213, 235, and another at 235. But the par fives, I mean, Greg, 17 is 507 yards. Number 7 is 517. There's we'll see. It's probably too early right now to look at the weather forecast, but that is really the defense out there. Is there going to be wind blowing in Southampton or not?
Yes, and if there is, well, it makes some of those wedge shots a lot more difficult. If it's crosswinds, you got to be really precise with the flight of your golf ball in order to control it, and it can make for a really stressful test because there's not a lot of protection out there from the wind. So it'll be coming at you all day long from all different directions, and it can lead to a great test. If there's no wind or light breezes, the players will have their way with it. But at the same time, that opens up the doors for a lot of guys to play some really good golf. So it'll be fascinating to see how this all plays out.
All right, I'm just gonna hit you. I'm gonna hit you with this. So the early forecast is pretty bad, actually. So Thursday, 22 to 24 mile an hour winds. Gets a little bit better on Friday, but then Saturday and Sunday they're calling for rain. They're calling for windy conditions up to 25 miles an hour. I mean, let's go. Let's beat these guys up a bit.
Yeah, that's what you want to see on this venue, because again, it opens up a door for some serious creativity. You got to start playing some different kinds of shots in conditions like that. And you got to be willing to grind, even on a 380 yard par 4, you got to stay with it because there's no gimmies in conditions like that. So that's a very, not necessarily a positive forecast to see for the players, but it is for us watching from our ivory towers.
Wow. Yes. I'll be safe and comfy and cozy at home. So, I mean, I don't care what happens to those guys. Okay. We'll keep an eye on that, obviously, as the week goes on, but we are going to turn our attention to this field. We're going to go tier by tier. We're going to start naming some names, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
Highlights and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
Sure. What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
All right, Greg, we are back, and the salaries were released very late on Monday. So these things are hot off the presses. We're looking at the cheat sheet on rickrungood.com, and there are 2 golfers over 10K. That is Seamus Power, 10,500, the most expensive golfer in the field, and Mackenzie Hughes, 10,300. This was going to be the plan last week. We were only going to have 2 golfers at the top, and then, of course, Cameron Young withdrew, and that just gave us Max Grazerman at the top. He certainly played well enough to warrant that price. But here we go. Another big 2, Greg. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I think that both of these guys really are playable when you consider the forecast especially. I really like what I've seen from Seamus Power, and he's done great with the putter. His ball striking has been good, although it's slipped perhaps a little bit in his last 2 starts. I still think there's a lot to like with Seamus Power. he's the most expensive player in the field. You may not be comfortable, even though he's a past champion here. You may not be comfortable starting him. I think I will say this, Rick. I think the weather forecast gives a big edge to Mackenzie Hughes, who, I'm kind of lukewarm on. But when we get into these situations where it's tough and the weather's bad and it's not overly long, that's a huge benefit. Mackenzie Hughes' style could fit perfectly into this. I think there's a lot of signs that he's been hitting the ball a little better, hitting the ball well enough. His struggles off the tee, some of those are distance related. I don't think that'll be a big issue here. And what he does with his short game and putting this week could be a big separator. So I thought they were both playable. After seeing the weather report, I probably put Mackenzie Hughes above Seamus Power slightly, even though Seamus Power has plenty of experience in bad weather being an Irishman.
He does, and he's got the experience around Port Royal. One here in 2022, a couple of other decent finishes. This will be the first time that Mackenzie Hughes tees it up at the Bermuda Championship. But you're right. I mean, kind of a short game specialist. We saw him get hot at times with wedges this fall. Hasn't always been consistent there, but this might be an opportunity for him to shine. And then if guys start missing greens, watch out, because that could be a pathway for Mackenzie Hughes to separate himself from the top of the board. The 9K range here, Greg, is Maverick McNeely, Ben Griffin, Doug Gim, and Patrick Rogers. That's the top to the middle. And then we round out with Lucas Glover, Justin Lauer, Sam Stevens, Matty Schmid, and Andrew Putnam. So a lot more names here. 9 guys in the 9K range. Which ones most stick out to you?
It's a really strong range. And there's an argument to be made for all of them. Maybe Patrick Rogers would be an exception. No discredit there, but I think his recent form, his play has probably, if you look at his advanced metrics, probably been beneath the rest in this class. So he may be out for me because of the price. But at the same time, there are so many guys I like. Doug Gim with this weather forecast, really hard for me to ignore. We've liked him the last couple of weeks. It was a T27 and a T20 that didn't feel all that great. But I'm excited to see what he could do this week, especially if the conditions get tough and it starts to lean toward the really good ball strikers, because his ball striking has been electric. So Doug Gim, definitely on my list. Go ahead. You have something to add?
I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, it's funny. We've been talking about Doug Gim, and it's been a bunch of really, really good finishes. The runner-up at TPC Summerlin was the best finish of the fall, but he's played well throughout. I kind of feel Ben Griffin is kind of interesting for me. He is putting together 2 or 3 really good rounds every single week and just kind of playing himself out of it. One round here, one round there. I just feel like, and correct me if you feel differently, that to me feels like it's easier to clean up than try to find somebody who can go out and put together another +4 round.
I think that's definitely true. And it's been spotty, and he's been driving it well. So there are a lot of positives for Ben Griffin. The driver would be the main concern for me. We've seen him get under the gun, which means he's in contention, but we've seen him get under the gun and struggle with some errant tee shots. It seems like right now the driver's in really good form for him. And it's not just a function of the golf course. Perhaps it is at Black Desert and Shriners where he gains strokes off the tee, but Zozo is certainly not a easy driving test. So I like Ben Griffin as well. Not as much as Lucas Glover.
I believe Lucas Glover, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure about it. If you just look at the players this fall, Lucas Glover is the #1 player in this field. He's gaining like 2 strokes per round. And that would make sense because his finishes, Greg, are T13, T3, T3, T24.
Yeah, it's pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. And look, some of these golf courses are not great for him. Like, I don't think the Black Desert Championship in Utah was a great setup for him. I don't think the Worldwide Technology Championship last week is a great setup for Lucas Glover. This I do. Even though he has a T63 and a T45 in his 2 starts here, I think there's a lot of juice to squeeze from Lucas Glover. And this one, the way he's hitting the ball, it just seems absolutely perfect.
Yeah, we don't know how he putted last week in Cabo, but he's picked up strokes on the putting surfaces in 2 of his 3 measured starts this fall. He is at $9,400. I've got the 3 guys at the bottom of this range: Sam Stevens, Matty Schmidt, Andrew Putnam. I've got them all start. I probably like them Stevens, then Putnam, then Schmidt. I think I'm like a 7 out of 10 on all of those guys. I'm not like going crazy for it, but like you said, I think this is a generally pretty strong range of golfers.
It is. And I love Matty Schmidt as well. He's probably 3rd of those 3 on my list as well. Andrew Putnam maybe first. I mean, look at he's got a top 27 or better in his last 3 starts. One of them in Europe at the Alfred Dunhill Links. He finished tied 25th there, tied 16th at the Shriners, tied 27th at the Zozo. We've seen some really good putting out of him, some phenomenal approach play. This feels, and Andrew Putnam also, if I'm not mistaken, has a pretty good, he has a T21 in his 1 start here. So I think there's a little evidence to suggest it's a good golf course for him, at least moderate. And this should be a great start. So I'm very high on Putnam.
Yeah, the reason that he loses strokes off the tee so consistently is because he is awfully short, 275 yards on average. Reminds me a lot of, I don't know, let's call it Brian Gay, Brendan Todd, right?
Yeah.
Guys that have had that beautiful triangle trophy after week's end. So yeah, I agree with you. Andrew Putnam at $9,000 off of, we haven't seen him since the Zozo Championship, and because that was kind of overnight, and I feel like he's almost forgotten at this point, because we talked about him probably 3 weeks ago at last I can remember.
Yeah, and there's a lot of reason to talk about him because his iron play is absurd.
Yeah,
just so good. And now all of a sudden you get scoring clubs in your hands, and those great iron shots lead to birdie opportunities instead of, wow, that was another great 4-iron to make a par, when other guys are hitting 8-iron in. You're not going to have that big separation this week. So yeah, it's game on for Andrew Putnam here.
Anything else in this 9K range before I roll us on here?
You mentioned Steven, so I'm in on him as well. Other than that, I think we're good to go.
All right. So the 8K range is kind of interesting because this morning when pricing came out, Joe Highsmith was in the 8K range. I believe he was $8,200. You can see there's a little bit of a gap there between Nick Taylor and Kevin Yu. And he has withdrawn from this event, playing well, going to take the week off. Taylor Montgomery also withdrew on Monday. He was not in the 8K range. I believe he was $7,800, something like that. But both of those guys are out. William McGirt and Russell Knox are in. As of right now, as we record this, those guys are not in the DraftKings pricing. There's probably a case for that they will be added on Tuesday morning, but just keep an eye out for that. The 8K range in itself right now is very interesting. Daniel Berger is $8,900. Andrew Novak, Johnny Vegas, Nico Echeverria, and Brendan Todd are $8,900 to $8,500. And then the rest of the range is Mark Hubbard, Nick Taylor, Kevin Yu, and then Jacob Bridgman, Greg. So kind of a lot going on here.
Yes. And there's a lot of guys in this range that are close, but they just don't, there's something that worries me for so many of them. And this may give it away. The first guy that I really like and I'd be interested in playing is Daniel Berger at $8,900. Daniel Berger's been driving it well since the Pro Tour. He's made 4 straight cuts. The putter, which really plagued him earlier in the year, seems to be coming back into Daniel Berger-like form. And again, I think this is a great golf course for him. Think about a guy that's won at Pebble Beach, a guy that's won at the Charles Schwab Challenge. Some of these smaller golf courses where precision is more important than distance. Daniel Berger's had a lot of success, and I don't necessarily think that he's going to go win the tournament, but I think that this is a golf course he can absolutely compete on, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get himself in the mix.
This is the best golf he's played in a 4 tournament stretch since he's come back. And also he is similar to Ben Griffin in the fact that he has had some unbelievably great rounds, +4, +5, and just one bad round each week is keeping him from putting together some really good performances or really good finishes. They're not bad, but I think he's probably playing better than some of these positions tell the story. So I agree. $8,900, Daniel Berger is quite fascinating.
So next, I really liked Highsmith, which may seem obvious. I thought the price was way too low. Maybe that's why he withdrew. You're
That's exactly
at
yes.
8,200.
He was insulted.
I'm insulted. See you later. So he's out. So I've added somebody in, but the third guy that was on my original list was Jacob Bridgman.
Yes.
Now, this isn't your cookie cutter stat profile, that we usually like to see where everything's green all the way across the board. It's not quite like that, but he's shown an ability in every area of the game. He's shown some great putting performances, which I think is important. The ability to drive it well, the ability to get hot with irons, proficient short game. Everything's just kind of inconsistent, but it's not inconsistent altogether. So he has provided, much like Daniel Berger, some really consistent results. In 2 of his last 4 events have been top 15 finishes. I think this is another great spot for Bridgman.
Yeah, he has put together a good proximity profile, which doesn't tell the whole story, but anything from like 75, let's call it like 75 to 200 yards, which is a pretty big range. He is at worst slightly better than tour average, and at best, like top 25 on tour. So it does make a lot of sense. And like you said, the finishes, especially this fall after the miscut at the Procore, which was his first event, have gotten much better, have gotten back on track. Could I offer you Nico Echeverria, who's gone win T6 and loves a good tropical location, Greg? Oh, come on.
I know. I don't think so.
Why? I think that DraftKings agrees with you with this price. I think the odds makers agree with you at what his outright number is. I just look at, okay, I can blind myself to his last 4 starts, which are basically him gaining 27 strokes to the field. Everything before that is miserable. But again, he likes these like little tropical spots.
Yeah. Did he find something? Look, last week was a big week for him to finish T6. It was a disappointing Sunday. You could argue he should have won again. It's crushing his closing percentage, which was perfect. There's a lot to like. I would probably, and this is probably the wrong way to look at it, I would feel a lot more comfortable if there was strokes gained data from last week.
It would be interesting to see what he did, because if he put together another +8 approach week or something like that, it would be really hard to deny. Yeah. But flying blind is a little scary.
I know. On just 2 weeks. I know he played well at the Black Desert too, but it's like 2 weeks of his whole career, and he's 8,600.
But it's the 2 most recent weeks, Greg.
Yes, I know. So I could see where you're coming from. I wouldn't fault you for it. I would never fault you for it. I just am probably a no.
Okay. If it's not Nico, is there any other route we could go?
Yeah, this is going to drive you nuts.
If you say Brendan Todd.
No.
Okay.
I love Brendan Todd, but I can't right now.
No.
The normal Brendan Todd take here is just not true this time around. Normally he's playing great, but it's too long and he just can't compete. Now he can. He has not been playing well.
No.
It has nothing to do with the golf course. He's got to get some things straightened out before I get back on that bandwagon like I normally am. Andrew Novak. All right. Now, I just look at this profile and I drool. He is so good. And I can't, if he takes a Nico Echeverria model and just switches to the claw grip or the reverse claw grip, or the broomstick on Tuesday this week, he's going to win. Now, I don't know when that's going to happen, but if Andrew Novak wins, and I didn't mention his name after mentioning it seemingly every week since June, I will be kicking myself. So with Highsmith out, I'm going back to Novak.
4 of his last 6, he's gained at least 5 strokes from tee to green. 4 out of his last 5, he's lost strokes with the putter. So that's what Greg's referring to about just finding a way to get the ball into the cup more efficiently. That is the question that when Andrew Novak answers, it ends up being a really, really good week.
Yes. Now, if he doesn't, we still have a really strong possibility for a top 10, a really strong possibility for a top 25. I still think that the floor is pretty high with him. Probably higher than Nico.
I mean, to gain 8 strokes from tee to green at the Zozo, that's a much better field than what he's going to get this week, right? T16 losing 3 strokes with the putter. So there is a case to be made that, even if that his floor is a lot higher just because of how he gets to the green. And then even if he struggles on the green, he has some pathways to like a top 10.
Right. It's like a math problem here. It's not, and that's why we keep going back to it. And it just hasn't happened yet, but I do believe that it will.
The 7K range. I'm going to take us to the 7s. I'm going to take us to the 6s. We're going to have to find some diamonds in the rough. We are going to continue this conversation after a quick word from our partners. And we're back. There are 36 golfers in the 7K range. They start with names like Alex Smalley, Rico Hoey, Carson Young. The middle of the range, that's Wesley Bryan, maybe a little bit of Chesson Hadley. And then the bottom of the range, that's where you find Kevin Chappell, Lonto Griffin, Scott Piercy, etc. So, Greg, I've got a couple of guys on the list here. Let's see what we can uncover.
I've got 4 guys.
Okay.
In a big range. There's normally more in the 7K range. It's slim. But first and foremost, a shout out to our very own Patrick McDonald for giving this shout out on Sunday. Many of you may have missed it. You may not have been paying attention, but he shouted out Grayson Sigg, and he's right. Grayson Sigg is a great play this week. He's been hitting the ball beautifully. He's got a T4 at the Procore, a T11 at the Black Desert, and a T23 at the Shriners. And he also has a pretty good record here, a T22 in 2021, a T11 in 2022. It's a good golf course for him. He's performing pretty well all the way across the board. I love what I'm seeing from Grayson Sigg.
Yeah, so if you what was going on with Grayson Sigg is he missed 6 consecutive cuts to end the main portion of the schedule up to the Wyndham Championship. He did not make the playoffs. So he gets the month-long reset. And now in the fall, I was quoting this number earlier. So Lucas Glover is number 1 in strokes gained this fall. I cannot remember who number 2 is, but I'm pretty sure it's Grayson Sigg who is number 3, which is why you're seeing these good results here. So yeah, maybe a little bit of a reset going a long way for him. And now he's going to get this week and next week, which are 2 places he should be pretty keen about because he's playing well. He's played well here, and then he goes home for Sea Island next week.
It's a perfect fit. A perfect fit. So I love the reset. I love the performance that he's given. The one missed cut was at the Sanderson Farms, and he only lost a shot to the field as well. So very clear that he's playing some high-level golf. All right. Next, Henrik Norlander.
Sure.
All right. Norlander doesn't have a great record here. In fact, he has a very poor record here. He's missed his last 3 cuts, and he has a T28 back in 2019. Doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies, but when he's played really well, Rick. It's, 3 top 30s in his last 4 starts. Every area of the game seems to have the ability to show up and perform. If anything, he tends to struggle with the putter, but in 2 out of his last 3 measured rounds, he's gained over 3 strokes putting. So I think there's a completeness to his game that could be a big benefit this week.
Talking about guys that have juice that could be squeezed out, he's one of them because he is finding the center of the club face repeatedly. Just needs to not lose 3 or 4 or 5 strokes putting. And like Greg said, 2 of his last 3 and maybe 3 out of his last 4. We don't know what he did in Cabo with the strokes gained numbers are positive. Guys that have also had good falls. I'm kind of playing a short-term game here. Wesley Bryan is one of those guys. So his results this fall have been T13, T37, T21. Then last week, Greg, T6. If you ask me what Wesley Bryan's skill set is, it's accuracy off the tee because he's short. He can usually putt it pretty well. He can turn into a pretty good second shot player. He's playing great golf right now, and this is a golf course that is not going to beat him up because of distance.
No, it's not. And he hasn't played great here. He has a miscut, a tied 37th last year. But I think it's pretty clear that he's playing a whole lot better right now than he was then. So I like what I've seen out of Wesley Bryan as well. He was on my list. So I got I got 2 halves.
Okay.
For the remaining guys.
That makes a hole.
So that's how we're going to get to 4. Ryan Moore is a half.
Okay, $7,200.
This would be a candidate for the Pale Play of the Week, which we haven't talked about in quite some time.
Yeah.
He basically just he gains a shot or loses a shot in every area of the game every week. Occasionally he'll lose 2 strokes putting, but it's been okay. The driver's been okay. He's extremely accurate, and he is extremely good in the short iron ranges. I believe I was looking earlier. I think it was from 50 to 125. He's right up there near the top, which is a wide wedge range.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good ones too. I mean, he's got 100 to 125, 125 to 150, 150 to 175. He's inside the top 15 on the PGA Tour in all of those.
And he's an accurate driver of the golf ball. And I mean, he can't hit it out of his shadow, so he better be.
Yeah.
But I think this is like the typical Brendan Todd scenario at this venue. He's playing well. He's hitting too many hybrids and 5-woods into par 4s when other guys are hitting wedges. And this week that won't be the case. So I think Ryan Moore is going to actually get to play golf the way that he would like to. And it could pay off. Could be a good week for him.
Okay, Ryan Moore, T5 at this event in the November 2023 edition. Okay, Greg, that was 1 half. Who was the other half?
Yeah, the other half, maybe it's 3/4 Ryan Moore, 1/4 Lonto Griffin. Oh, all right, at 7,000 flat.
Yeah.
He's started to make a lot of cuts in a row. Hasn't missed a cut since the John Deere. His driving has gotten a whole lot better, which it was before all of his injury issues. His iron plays gained strokes approaching the green in his last 4 in a row. You're talking about 6 events in a row where he's gained strokes ball striking. And 2 starts ago at the Shriners, he gained 5 strokes with the flat stick. The putter it doesn't look great on paper, largely because he lost 4 strokes at the Pro Tour. But really the other ones have been, he lost half a shot at the Barracuda, gained 1 shot at the 3M, lost 0.6 at the Black Desert. It hasn't been quite as bad as it may look if you just looked at colors. So I think there's I think there's something for Lanto. You could take a chance on him at 7,000 flat.
He modeled. So I did. I ran a couple models. One of them was just very short term, kind of like some Bermuda putting stuff. And he was like top 12, which at $7,000 is significant. And you're right. It's the consistency of making cuts. It's the driver. It's the ability to find a good putting. Yeah. I mean, even I shouldn't even say just the driver. The ball striking in general has been really good. Picked up 3 at both the Black Desert and the Shriners. So yeah, Lanto. I'm certainly not declaring him back. And even if he was back, it's not like that was.
It's at least a sign that he's healthy and been healthy.
Yeah, correct. I agree.
And I think I don't think Lanto is like Daniel Berger, where he's been a top 10 player in the world at one point. But I do think he is has a better fingerprint than 7,000 in the Butterfield Bermuda Championship.
I agree. I also do not think Lanto Griffin is Daniel Berger. That is something that certainly a lot of us could agree with. All right, the $6,000 range here. So this is the rest of the field. 61 golfers. There's another Brian in this field. That's George. George is in this field. Both the Brian Bros are here. He's at $6,100. Eric West, DA points, min price. I don't know why I'm starting at the bottom, but I'll go this direction. The $6,500 range. That's your Hayden Buckley, Sean O'Hare's, Troy Merritt's. And then the top of this range, David Skins, Kelly Craft, Martin Laird, Matthew Neesmith are a handful of the guys at 6,900, Greg.
Okay. You may look at this range and say there's nothing here. But I don't necessarily, I like we said, I think this golf course is going to allow a lot of guys to play. And I think there's a couple of options.
Okay.
So, first and foremost, I have not said this name in a DFS show, maybe ever, maybe once, but Brandt Snedeker.
Wow.
6,700 is so live this week. Look at his last 3 starts. Tied 12th on the European Tour. Okay, in August. He's playing the D&D Real Czech Masters, finishing tied 12th. Comes back for the FedEx Cup Fall, T26 at the Procore. Sanderson Farms, T16. He's putting like Brandt Snedeker normally putts. He's hitting the ball pretty well with his irons, considering, right? He's gained strokes approaching the green in his last 3 starts. That's pretty good for Brandt Snedeker. The other thing that I really like about Brandt this week is if you go into the approach play 100 to 125, that kind of wedge range, he's 21st on the PGA Tour and like 7th in this field. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's 8th in this field. Kind of a strong suit of his game. So I think Brandt Snedeker's live.
I'll tell you what, I was shaking my head when you said his name. The profile is a lot better than I thought.
Yeah, he's got a little something going.
I mean, the putter's really always been there and has been, even though the play has fallen off. And you're right. The last three or so, especially since the PGA Tour season ended for him, have been very good. Okay. Wow. All right. We're off to a roaring start. $6,700.
Yeah.
Brandt Snedeker.
Something tells me you're going to be shaking your head at everybody that I select here.
Okay.
But coming up next, we got Ryan McCormick. Very short term, like you've done with some of your models. Last 2 starts, tied 16th at the Shriners, tied 24th last week at the Worldwide Technology Championship. Now, why am I willing to go on 2 starts for a guy that missed 6 cuts in a row before that? Why am I willing to go on the last 2 for Ryan McCormick and not for Nico Echeverria? Well, because he's $6,600.
These are all great questions, Greg.
Yeah. I'm asking them and answering them tonight, Rick. But look, this is at the Shriners. He was good off the tee. He gained strokes in every area except around the green. He lost 0.3 strokes in that category. Ryan McCormick's name also pops up when you look at the approach play from 100 to 125. He's 24th on tour and 9th in this field. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another strong performance out of him.
Wow. Okay. I favorited his name. You are finding some true diamonds in the rough here.
Yes.
The chat is doing their best as well. Adrian Dumont de Chasse has popped up here. ADDC. Let's do a little bit of a deep dive and see what. Oh boy, I'm not sure I trust the chat on this one. That is
I don't.
3, 6, 9 in a row losing strokes to the field. His best finish. Oh boy, his best finish since. Oh boy, his best finish.
Well, you got to go back to the Puerto Rico Open.
Oh boy, the Puerto Rico Open, a T6. After that, his best finish was a T23, Punta Cana, or if we're doing a tropical thing. But his best finish since then is a T30, and let me tell you, he has not sniffed many of these since then. I'll say good luck with ADDC. It won't be my money.
Look, maybe this is the recipe. There's always surprises, but you're rolling the dice if you go that route.
It is. I do love the tropical thing, but didn't play well in Cabo last week, so that kind of.
Do you consider this This is kind of tropical.
I don't know. It's on an island, Greg.
I know, but there's it's different. It's shorter. A lot of these island courses are
big and wide, and
yeah. This is short and tight, different.
Yeah.
If it fits my analysis, I will certainly use Bermuda as a tropical island golf course.
It can only help the case. It can't hurt your case.
It cannot hurt the case.
Anybody else here? We've got at least 3. Oh, Kelly Craft is just the pure. Okay, so I made this joke earlier. Kelly Craft, this always happens. He only has 2 skill sets. They are driving accuracy and they are putting. And of course, they're the only 2 skill sets that really pop off for this week. He's been playing miserable, but he plays just well enough. Just well enough last week, a T24. This always happens. These guys that you can only feel comfortable playing or remotely comfortable playing once a year always play good, just good the week before. They always do it. It is incredibly annoying.
Yeah. I'm probably staying away. Kelly Craft showed us a little something earlier in the year where there was more to go on. I'm not worried about, how often I'm going to play Kelly Craft, but I get your point.
16, 15, 16. I don't know how old he is. 15 or 16. Miles Russell is in the field.
Cool. Very cool. We'll be watching. Will not be playing in a DraftKings lineup. Look, I think it'll be a phenomenal feat to make the cut. And I think he could do it. Why not?
I agree.
But that's the upside. Make
Anybody
the cut.
else?
Yeah, these are somewhat weak. But Tom Whitney has put together in 2 of his last 3 starts, he's finished in the top 45. Some of his iron play was pretty darn good before the Shriners, which I like. He's popped up with some good putting here and there. Tom Whitney also pops up on my I guess my cheat sheet list for the 6K range is simply wedge play. But now I'm not seeing him. Maybe it was 50 to 120. Oh, there he is. 44th on tour from 100 to 125. Which is 20th in this field.
I have a question for the Wawrinski whisperer, Richie Wawrinski, who has not been on the PGA Tour. He's been playing on the Korn Ferry. He's been playing all right, Greg. T36, T55, T13, and then the Korn Ferry Tour Championship, T25. What has he done in Bermuda? He's made 2 cuts, T23, T69.
Well, I will say this. I'm probably not going to start him this week. I had a source tell me a long time ago when this all started, that the best thing about Richie Wawrinski is he would never play the Korn Ferry Tour. He said, if I have to, I'll quit golf.
Wow.
And so the thing about it is he would step up at the end of the year. Right. It was a real fight. So I'm wondering if the fact that he has been playing the Korn Ferry Tour kind of found a little more passion for the game, enjoying it, thinks he is on the right track and can get something going. That would be my. I find it very interesting that he has been playing out there, because I always worried. It always stuck with me. He'll quit if he doesn't step. So he puts so much pressure on him. Okay, I better step up, otherwise I'm done. I'm not, being relegated. I'm going to go be something else for my career.
Well, now he's a liar, Greg. He says he was going to quit, and now he's playing on the court.
No, that was years ago. Minds can change. We're talking 6 years ago when I heard that. But very, very interesting. So I hope he's able to get things rolling and get back out on tour so I can whisper his name some more.
Richie Warinsky. I
got one other guy in the 6,800 range.
Do it.
Roger Sloan. Second in this field behind only Lucas Glover from 100 to 125. And he's 6,800 as well. The play has been not great. Been so-so. Struggle with the putter a little bit. But maybe he gets some of these short irons in his hand, and we can get something like we did in 2020 with a T16 finish here.
What is his hat? His hat says Mom Water.
You haven't heard of it?
What is Mom Water?
I have no idea.
Hold on. It is a canned alcoholic beverage company that provides low-calorie drink, no sugar, no carbs, artificial flavors, preservatives, etc., available in 30 states across major retailers. Is it just for moms?
And Roger Sloan.
I wonder if he's involved. Because I can't imagine Mom Water was like, listen, we got to get the word out. I've got the perfect way. This not mom, Roger Sloan, professional golfer.
One of the best short iron players on the PGA Tour. Give him 113. He's going to flag it.
Very interesting to me. Okay. Maybe he's like an investor.
He could be. Does the no sugar thing bother you? Have you ever done any research on sugar?
No. Should I?
Well, if you want to be afraid of everything you eat for the rest of your life.
Okay. What's the problem with it? Is it like
well, there are certain schools of thought.
Okay.
I'm not saying I necessarily buy into any of these, but the determinant of a healthy food is what it does to your blood sugar levels. Okay. It's kind of a common thing now. And as your blood sugar it rises, it creates an insulin spike to try to calm that down, and it's very bad for your system in general. That's why sugary foods are bad for you. But it doesn't have to be sugar. So there are some carbohydrates that create this insulin response, which is what you're trying to avoid when you avoid sugar, the insulin response. And your body turns certain things into sugar.
Interesting. Carbs
being some of them. And one of the biggest is alcohol. So I just heard that I found, sugar-free alcohol is very ironic because it
got
really
it. So this is the right. So really, despite it being sugar-free, is still creating that same response.
You may as well have a Diet Coke.
Wow.
Well, I guess Diet Coke also could be sugar-free too, technically.
So
So
I guess we should just drink water.
Yes.
Straight water.
Yeah, you could have tea or black coffee. That's fine too.
I have some breaking news. Roger Sloan is on Mom Water's website as a partner. So the partners are Indiana Pacers, Dallas Mavericks, Indiana University Athletics, and Roger Sloan.
So that's pretty big. That's big in Indiana.
Also,
does he live there? He's Canadian.
He's Canadian. I don't know where he lives. Also, more breaking news. I was clicking through their shop here. They do also have Dad Water, which is the same fruit-infused water you know and love, this time with tequila.
They say it's the most healthy alcohol.
Well, I trust you, Greg, for all my liquid intakes.
Yeah. Basically, don't drink alcohol. I know that's unrealistic for many, but if you're trying to be healthy, there's no alcohol that's good for you.
If I do, it should be tequila.
Yeah. That's what they say.
Oh, well, I trust they.
Yeah. I read it on the internet.
Oh,
so
sweet.
it must be true.
I love it. All right. Well, listen, we are going to put a pin into this conversation until tomorrow, which will be the mega preview pod. Now, Josh, I am under the impression we are going early tomorrow. Is that an accurate statement? Because yes, we are. Okay. So the mega preview pod, if you would like to catch it live, if not, it'll still be available on demand. That's how the internet works. You can see it at 2 p.m. Eastern time. That'll be myself. It'll be Mark Immelman. It'll be Patrick McDonald. And then we will go on Sunday for the Bermuda Championship recap. I'm sure there will be some discussion around the DP World Tour Championship that is being played this week. Rory McIlroy going for number 6 over there in their season-long Race to Dubai Championship. So lots of things to talk about. For now, I'm going to say thank you to producer Josh. He does all the hard work behind the scenes. Greg DuCharme, available at The Real GFD, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. Catch you next time.